Now, let's say you want to start a diet. So you've made up your mind that you're going to follow a diet because you need to lose those extra kilos. So you're all fired up. You've made this whole diet plan and you're very pumped up to just go and follow this because you feel that this will help you get the body that you want. But 3 days later, you're looking in the fridge for a cookie. Has that ever happened to you? Well, I'm sure it did because I've been there too. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you with some cheat codes that have helped me stick to my dieting plan no matter what the condition is. And these are not just typical tips, but they are also proper strategies that help you stick to your diet on a daily basis. So let's not waste any time and let's get started. Now, before I consume my meal, what I do is that I take in a little bit of apple cider vinegar. So what you have to do is just take the cap of the apple cider vinegar and just put a little bit of apple cider in it. So 2 caps of that apple cider and just try and mix it with water and consume it at least half an hour before your meal. Now what apple cider vinegar does is that it will not make you eat so much, so you won't be really consuming a lot of calories and you'll consume much fewer calories. It will also help your insulin levels not really raise, so it kind of regulates your blood sugar. So if you're going on a diet and especially trying to lose weight, then something like an apple cider vinegar before your meal really helps. So what I do is if I'm having my breakfast, my lunch or my dinner, the main big meals, I'll always consume a little bit of apple cider vinegar before the meal, at least half an hour before the meal. Also make sure that you dilute apple cider vinegar with water because it is quite acidic in nature and it might irritate your throat or your stomach lining. So try and just dilute it in water and take very little bit of it. Now the very next thing I do is that I work out in a fasted state. So when I wake up, I try to consume water or I just try to consume any drink that doesn't really have calories and I would directly hit the gym. What happens at this point is that your body is already in a fasted state. And when I'm working out, I'm doing strength training and cardio, my body doesn't really have any energy or any stored glucose because it has used all of it in the night while I was sleeping. And because you've not eaten, so your stomach is empty and your body is looking for energy, so it has no other option but to take fat and use it for energy to fuel your workouts. And this really makes it very efficient if you're planning to lose weight and burn that fat. Because what happens is that if you eat a meal, your body already has food in it. So it will use that food to give you the energy rather than using your stored fat for energy. And I have seen a lot of results when I've worked out in more of a fasted state because whenever I've worked out at a fasted state, I've seen quite a lot of results when it comes to me burning fat as compared to when I work out at a time where I've eaten a meal and then I've gone to work out. And try it out yourself because you will literally see the difference. But if you're someone who likes to eat a meal and then maybe go and work out, just make sure that you have your meal at least 2.5 hours before you do your workout. And if you're wondering like why this specific time, well, I do have another video which explains it in much detail. Now the next thing what I do is I try to avoid any high glycemic load foods at night. So I try to avoid all the high glycemic foods that have a glycemic load of 21 plus. So all the foods like your rice, your pasta, your bread, your chapatis, all of that, I just try and avoid it as much as I can. But if I crave, I just try to have maybe a little rice or maybe just one single chapati. And the only reason I try to avoid all these high glycemic load foods is that they will really raise your blood sugar. So by the time your body jumps into those fat stores and uses them to burn them for fuel, it will take quite a long time after you've consumed your meal. So maybe after you've had your dinner, it will take at least 2.5 to 3 hours to get into those fat stores to use them for energy. So for my dinner, I try to keep things really light where I have foods that don't really raise my blood sugar as much. So all the glycemic load foods that are below the glycemic load of 20, I try to consume most of my foods in that area. But the very next thing that I really try and stay away from is processed food. Now, I love processed food as much as most of you do. So whether it's your potato chips or it's your biscuits or anything of that sort, I kind of love it a lot. But I try and stay away from it as much as I can. Because for that moment, that biscuit or that potato chip will really taste good, but in the long run, it's really going to screw up your health. And just for that one moment where I'm going to consume it while I watch something, it's going to take a lot of my health. So just try and stay away from all of it. I know they are very tempting, but in the long run, it really affects your health. And the best way to stay away from all of this is just do not buy them. When you have them right in front of you in your kitchen, you will most probably want to pick it up and consume it. So try to not store them at home and try to not keep any of these processed foods even near you. Now, the very next thing is to have a lot of protein and fibrous foods. So, if you have just started to diet, just make sure that your meals have good enough protein and quite a lot of fiber. And what happened is that when I started to eat good enough protein and a lot more of fiber, I ended up feeling fuller for a longer time. So, I didn't really snack in between, and it didn't really allow me to feel very hungry in between. So all those in between snacks that I used to consume, well, it just completely stopped because I was fuller for a very long time. And whenever you have foods that are rich in protein, what happens is that those foods take a lot more time to be burned and digested. So your body uses a lot more energy to just burn that protein. So it ends up using a lot more calories to just break down that food. And when you have a lot more of your fibrous foods, like your whole grains, vegetables, and fruits, what happens is that those foods provide you with all the nutrients that you require. And at the same time, fiber is really good for your gut health. So, in short, you're just having a full power packed meal. Now, the next thing that I did when it comes to me eating food is that I try and take a small bowl or a small plate when I have to consume any kind of food. Now, this will really change the way you look at food. Now, what this does is that when you eat in a small plate or a small bowl, you end up taking much lesser food, and that already ends up becoming pretty much like portion control. So, you also end up eating fewer calories, and at the end, you're also consuming your meal. And with this, what I also do a trick is that I try and chew my food really slowly. Because the slower I chew my food and I eat whatever is there in my plate, you end up feeling full a little faster. So, whenever you take food in a smaller plate and you've consumed it and you've finished whatever is there on the plate, before you go for your second serving, just wait for around 10 minutes. Most probably, you will be really full. Because what happens is that your brain takes a little while to understand or to get the signal that it's already full and it doesn't require any more food. Now, this really helped me the most, and that is that no matter what you do, you only stick to water. And if you feel like you want any kind of added flavor to it, then you can go for black coffee or any herbal teas, or maybe just squeeze some lime in hot water. Now, drinking water boosts metabolism, and your herbal teas and your even lime with water are really good for your liver, and all of them are great for your body overall. Not so much of the black coffee, but most of the others are great overall, and they literally don't have any added sugar, and also they have zero calories. The thing is that the more you stick to all of these, you don't really end up having a lot of these sugar beverages and a lot of these sodas and everything that have tons of other additives and chemicals in it, which your body doesn't really require. And if you don't like any of those herbal teas, and even if you don't like your coffee, just stick to water. Now, I know many of you are like me and you like something sweet or you like to consume something sweet after a meal. So, most of the time, I used to jump onto a chocolate or something that is really, really sweet. But what I do these days is I try to trick my brain with having something sweet. So, if I feel or I crave, like I really want to have something sweet, I go for either a date, not the other date, or something that is a fruit that also has a similar sweetness level. Now, honestly, they are a much better option than consuming your chocolates and your highly sweetened beverages or anything that's like super sweet. So, if you really feel like having something sweet, then you can just have maybe a date or have any fruit that you like. The good thing about all of these are that they have quite a lot of fiber, so the fiber will slow down the absorption of sugar that has to enter your blood. Plus, because it's fiber, so it's going to make you full. And sometimes when I don't really feel like having a date, I try and just take a banana, I slice it into multiple pieces, I put it in a really tiny bowl, and I just top it up with some seeds or some mixed seeds, like your sunflower, your flax seeds, and even your pumpkin seeds. So this really kind of adds a little sweetness, and also it is very nutritionally dense. Now, when you've made a lot of changes to your food and you're trying something new, your cravings kind of increase a lot. And somewhere for me, I also do face that. So I try and keep one of the days where I'm having a cheat meal and not a cheat day. So what most people do is that they try and have like a cheat day, but try and stick to a cheat meal where you just have that one meal of your favorite food. Maybe if you like a burger or a pizza, or even if you're craving for something really sweet like a dessert, just go for that and just make sure that you only have that in that one meal. So what I would do is that anytime I crave something on my cheat day, I would have a cheat meal, but the entire day I would follow my diet as it is. So what's really good about this is that you get to eat what you really want or you really is something that you're craving. And on the other hand, you're also still on track because it's just one meal. But if you just consume a cheat meal, you won't really feel that bad because the rest of the day you're still sticking to your diet. Now, the next is what I think I've become the master of is making the right excuses. Now, when you're out with your friends and you're in a social setting, you just have to be the master of excuses. Let's say, for example, your friends are forcing you to consume alcohol or maybe consume that unhealthy food, and you know that you really want to stick to your diet and you don't feel like consuming any of that. But there are times that when people start enforcing you, you just fall into it. So you should be the master of making excuses for a good cause. So you say things like, I have acidity, or I really have a stomach issue, or, I just recovered from a health issue, so I don't really want to consume all these things. Try and make or be the master of saying the right excuse. Because many a times, some people can be really adamant about forcing you to have something. And for some, I know it's really difficult to say no. But there are times where I feel like, okay, I want to be or let myself a little loose, and then I would just consume a single glass of wine. So you really need to be the master of making excuses. And another trick that I use with it is that when I'm going out to meet my friends, or I'm going out in a social setting and I want to stick to my meal plan and I want to stick to the way I eat. So, one thing that I do is I try to eat my food at home and then go to meet people or go in a social setting like that. And the only reason I do this is because if I go to any of these restaurants or if I go to meet my friends at a cafe, at that point you're really hungry, so your brain is just going to think of food. And most of us have come to this point where we've really kept ourselves so hungry that when we reach a place or a social setting like that, we've all ended up consuming all the food that we shouldn't be eating. And that's a very normal thing because when you are hungry, you will just eat anything and your brain is not going to process what's good and what's bad at that moment. Your brain is just going to think that, listen, I'm hungry, just give me food. So, what I do is I try to eat food at home so that when I'm outside, I don't really crave to eat more food. And even if I do, I just try and make better choices because my brain is not in an extreme hunger state. Now, the next is something that I feel you really need to follow, and it's one of the most important things because when you don't follow this, you end up consuming a lot more food, and that is sleep. So, when I was sleeping properly, my food patterns, my diet, my overall energy was much better. But the moment I start sleeping at odd timings, I go for longer night outs, and my sleep schedule is just all over the place. The following day, I would end up feeling more hungrier more often, and I just would end up eating anything. And it's not just me, but if you don't sleep really well, the hormones ghrelin and leptin, which are responsible for activating your hunger and suppressing it, or telling your brain that it's had enough of food, they don't really function too well, and your body just keeps sending a lot of signals, and it confuses the brain whether you're really hungry or you're not. So, what I did was I tried to sleep at the same time, and more importantly, I tried to wake up at the same time. Now, this I feel is one of the most important, and that is to stay hungry. Now, when I say stay hungry, I really mean that you need to be in quite a fasted state. Now, this is one of the most important practice that I followed, and I really saw great results. And the reason why this really helps, because if you look at anything, whether it's your calorie deficit, or if you look at your intermittent fasting, or if you look at those 3 meals a day or 1 meal a day, what happens is that you're not really starving, but you're giving your body enough food, and the rest of the time you're letting your body use its fat stores for energy. But if every time you're going to keep consuming food, your body is not really going to get into those fat stores because it constantly is getting energy from the outside. So it will keep using the energy that it keeps getting rather than using your fat stores for energy. And in today's time, what is happening is that we're eating so much that your body doesn't really need to tap into those fat stores because it's continuously getting the supply of energy. And eventually, your body is like a machine. If you're constantly going to make this machine work, it's not going to really last for long because it's going to get overloaded at some point and then it's going to just crash. But if you give your body enough of work and then you give it also good enough rest, this machine will last much longer. And the last is stress. Now, of course, stress is something that is inevitable and it comes in a lot of variations. But when you keep stressing, you need to really ask yourself is the outcome going to change? Especially if you're worrying about something a lot. Most of the time, whether I worry or not, the outcome is not going to change. So make sure that you have good self-talk which motivates you and de-stresses you. or do things that are very hobby like, whether you like to paint, you like to sing, you like to dance, do anything that de-stresses you. For me, sometimes if that chatter is not really working, I just go for a walk outside, or sometimes I just play music and I just dance. So do anything that works for you. So, well, these were my personal cheat codes when it comes to dieting. And honestly, it makes it much more easier and much more effective. Just remember that it's all about finding something that really works for you. And you will face a lot of barriers and obstacles, but just try and make these small changes because eventually they will become sustainable changes overall. And you will end up sticking with it for a longer time. And apart from that, I also would love to hear from you and what are the cheat codes that you use when you are dieting. Drop them in the comments below. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And until we meet again next, don't stress and be awesome. Rocher that.